Looking to recruit the best villagers possible in Medieval Dynasty? Then I've got you covered. Because in this video, we're going to look at where and how to obtain the best villagers possible than your usual suspects at the newcomer campfires. Normally when you want to find villagers to join your settlement in Medieval Dynasty, you seek out the newcomer campfires outside the main cities and ask villagers to join your village. We'll be focusing on special villagers on the Oxbow map, which have a random chance to spawn every season in static locations. One thing I need to mention though is that these villagers do have a pretty low chance of spawning, so don't get too discouraged if you don't find any when you're looking for them for your first time. Just try checking again when starting the next season. When you do find these villagers though, I recommend saving just before talking to them, in case you accidentally choose the wrong dialogue options. Now let's start with what I consider the worst of the best, and that is the Witch, which can be found in the abandoned fishing hut east of Klonitsa, or the ruins south of Klonitsa. Skill-wise, she's not a bad villager, having a 6 in survival, 4 in diplomacy, 3 in production and farming, and 2 in extraction and hunting. But the reason I say she's the worst is due to her age, because when you find her, she's gonna be in her mid-60s, and in Medieval Dynasty, villagers have a chance to die naturally every season if they are over 60. On the most recent time I found her, she only lasted about 2 seasons for me, but I've had others say that she lasted years for them, so it really depends honestly. Just walk through her dialogue, tell her you're building a settlement and need people, and she will join your village. Having a really good survival villager early on is pretty good for fishing pike in the fishing hut, but you can also have her gather herbs in the herbalist hut too. I probably wouldn't bother placing her in any other job, unless all of your survival villagers are better. Next on the list are villagers with good production skill, which can be found in 4 locations: on the outskirts of Klonitsa, just outside the city, south of the creek past Klonitsa, the bridge southwest of Piastovia, and on the bridge leading out of Ostoya. This villager is pretty eager to be recruited, and eventually you should get a dialogue that involves you telling them that you are building a settlement. Upon recruiting, this villager will have 6 in production, 4 in extraction, 3 in farming, and 2 in everything else. If you find this villager early, they might be a better fit working in an extraction workplace like the woodshed, since wood demand is pretty heavy early on, but a production job like the kitchen, smithy, or workshop would be a pretty great fit for this villager. You can also find a villager with good production that'll be trapped inside a cage inside an abandoned camp east of Skauki, and she will tell you that she forgot to pay the king's tax of 1 like or 1 sub, and to not make the same mistake she did. But for real though, bandits basically left her alone in the camp and took the key with them, but she says that she can guide you to pick the lock. Completing her lockpicking dialogue will allow you to recruit her to your settlement, and upon recruiting her, she will have a 5 in production, 4 in diplomacy, 3 in hunting, and 2 in everything else. Literally any production workplace is a good job for this villager, but I'd probably avoid anything that isn't a production job, aside from maybe the market stall. But since market stall skill levels pretty quickly for villagers, starting with a 4 in diplomacy isn't too valuable in my opinion. The next special villager type is a farmer that can be found hanging out by the creek south of Klonitsa, west of Piastovia by the pond, and far north of Ostoya. You'll likely find them picking up arrows off the ground, cursing that they should have taken up farming instead of hunting. Lucky for you if you find them, you can offer them a job to farm, and they will accept your request and join the village. Upon recruiting, their skills are 6 in farming, 3 in extraction, diplomacy, and production, 2 in survival, and 1 in hunting. Naturally, a farming job is best to have them work like in a barn, windmill, apiary, or an animal pen, but I'd probably exclude the stables and the donkey shelter. Another farming villager can also be found at the beach cave near the swamp, but he'll be locked up in a cage and heavily guarded by bandits. So get yourself a suit of armor and a weapon, clear out the bandits, find the cage key, and set the farmer free. Once he's out, tell him he's free to do as he pleases, and eventually you'll be able to offer him a place in your settlement. Upon recruiting, you will have a 6 in farming, 3 in survival and hunting, 2 in production, and a 1 in extraction and diplomacy. If you find these special farming villagers early, I would say they'd be a good fit for the pigsty, else have them work with any other animals, the windmill, or the barn. Like I said before though, I wouldn't recommend putting them in the farm shed, stables, or donkey shelter unless you already have good farmers, but they can work in those places too. The next special villager you can find is a good hunting villager that spawns in 3 locations. The first being the lake north of Skauki, on the road directly east of Piastovia, and a fork in the road south of Ostoya. When you find him, ask if he's a bandit, and after a few questions, he'll ask you to give him your money. But instead of giving him money, you can offer him a chance to work, which he will accept. Upon recruiting, he will have a 6 in hunting, 3 in extraction, diplomacy, and survival, 2 in production, and 1 in farming. Hunting villagers take a pretty long time to level early, so unless you find this villager super late game, put him in your hunting lodge. If you don't need hunters, I just put him where you can fit him then. The next special villager is actually some homeless dude that can be found sitting outside of the east gate of Piastovia, the winding road that leads in and out of Skauki to the north, or by the Dovecote in Ostoya near the Wagoner. When you talk to this guy, he's gonna ask you for money and say that he is poor and homeless. And while you can give him money, which will prevent you from recruiting him, there will be a dialogue option where you can tell him that you can offer him something better than that being a job and a roof over his head. Many of these dude's skills are not great, but he makes up for it in having a 6 in diplomacy and 5 in survival, making him great for the fishing hut, the herbalist hut, or a market stall. All of his other skills are atrocious, having a 1 in everything else. You could argue that maybe he'd make an okay worker for the farm shed, the stable, or the donkey shelter, since you don't really need a high-skilled villager for those jobs. But unless you have a good survival worker already, I'd ignore every other workplace. It's already going to be bad enough that his kids are going to inherit some of his bad skills. Next, we have the villagers with good extraction, which I'd consider the best villagers to find if you find them early in your playthrough. This villager, as far as I know, has 3 different spawn areas. On the road east of Skauki near the water, on the road south of Piastovia, across from the waterfall, and between the fork in the road north of Ostoya. When you find him, ask if he's alright, and he'll tell you that he's now an ex-bandit that regrets a recent raid. If you give him a second chance, he will join the village, and upon recruiting, he will have a 6 in extraction, 4 in farming, 3 in hunting, and 2 in everything else. If you find this villager early, putting him in the woodshed is a must, but he would also be good working in the well, the extraction shed, or the mine. Another villager with good extraction that you can get is near the crossroads south of Piastovia, but this one is another caged villager surrounded by bandits. So like the last one, clear out all the bandits, find the key in the camp, and release the villager. One thing to know about this villager is that he's still a kid, so when you first recruit him, you won't be able to work for a couple years, so I recommend setting him up as an apprentice as soon as you get him. Once he turns 18 though, you're gonna have a villager that's gonna have at least a 6 in hunting, 5 in extraction, 3 in survival and production, 2 in farming, and 1 in diplomacy. By the way, this kid is kinda rude if you free him, but just tell him he's just a kid and needs help, and that will allow you to recruit him. It's no wonder his diplomacy is 1, to be honest. And lastly is the jack of all trades, who isn't really good at any one particular skill, but has a 4 in extraction, farming, and survival, and 2 in hunting, diplomacy, and production. So you could have this villager work in the well, the woodshed, the extraction shed, the mine, the herbalist hut, the fishing hut, any animal pens, barn, field, or the apiary. It's really situational or dependent on what part of the game you're at, but she's good at most jobs apart from producing in the hunting lodge. When you find this villager, they will also be trapped in a cage in a bandit camp, actually pretty close to where you find the villager where you have to help lockpick her out of her cage. Just like the other caged villagers, clear out the bandits, find the key in the camp, and set her free. Walk through her dialogue, and you'll eventually have a choice to invite her to your settlement or not. I'll leave a link to a map showing all the locations of the villagers, and a video of the route I like to take to find all of these villagers in the description below. Also, I may have missed some recruitable villagers, so if there are any recruitable villagers that you found that I didn't mention in this video, be sure to leave a comment about their skills and where to find them below. But I hope that helps you in your medieval dynasty journey. So until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.